Thank you very much, Elisa, for chairing this session. And now I will, it's my task to introduce the next one with entitled Technical and Organizational Obstacles and Solutions for Secure Data Platform in Cancer Imaging. It's my pleasure to introduce Lauren Fromont. Lauren is the scientific project manager at the Center for Genomic Regulation and involved in the project. So, Lauren, the podium is yours.
Thank you, Emanuele. I will start with sharing my screen. All right. Can you see it full screen now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Excellent. So thank you for the introduction. Thank you for bearing with us until the end of this workshop. My presentation will focus on the data platforms, on the sharing part of the process. And when I was asked to introduce this panel with a small presentation, well, I decided that it would be a good idea to focus on the security part as well as, the challenges in sharing your own data part while keeping control over it. Okay, so to introduce this, I'd like to go to an imaginary use case. So just imagine you're researching oncology and you're looking for imaging and associated clinical data from breast cancer. And then, EuCanImage would provide a service where you can access data. So this is a copy of a screenshot of the virtual research environment for EuCanImage. I think Karim at the beginning introduced it as well. So this is still under development. But the three things that you might want to do when you're in this workspace is obviously to authenticate yourself, browse the data, and start accessing files. Of course, the fourth very important point that you will want to do eventually is to run AI tools, but I think this can be the topic of a whole workshop itself. So we'll focus on the first three ones. And so the thing is, what we want as data platforms and archives is that it really is as seamless as possible for users, but it remains a little bit of a black box. So,
hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Can you unmute, please?
Yeah, I think they muted themselves. Okay, so the idea is for me to basically open the black box a little bit and in a nutshell, get you through the different important aspects. So the first one would be identification. So as a user, you would obviously log in and sign into your account, and this should be a secure process. So the security really depends on the protocol that is selected. In the virtual research environment, normally it's a web-based protocol that is selected. So we usually use HTTPS/GET or something of the like. So you identify with a token, and it's already quite secure. However, in the archives like XNAT for imaging or the European Genome Phenome Archive for non-imaging data, we tend to prefer the server-based ones. So Aspera, SFTP are good candidates just because SSH keys and passwords are more secure. What is very important for us is that the users between the VRE, the data catalog, and data repositories are mapped together. So if you sign in as Mary to the VRE and as user one to the EGA, then we need to know that you're the same person in order for you to get the data from the VRE. Okay, then browsing files. Actually, the first type of files that I'm listing here, you don't even need to authenticate at all, because these are public files. So any user on the internet can access them. So usually this is the case for synthetic data, for example, that anyone can access. What is of more interest for us, because we're dealing with more sensitive data, are registered and controlled access. So for both of them, you need a EuCanImage account in our case. And for controlled access, you also need to have been granted access by the data controller. So the data controller is normally the data owner. So if you're a research institution or hospital that is decided to share the data, you have to remain in control of your data. One very interesting tools for permissions that we want to implement are the GA4GH passports. So just like a visa on your passport will allow you to go from one country to another, a visa on this type of passport would allow you to access data from the same study, let's say, but from different places. So if you have associated imaging and non-imaging data, then you can use your visa to be able to access both. If we go a little bit more granular and then look at the control access to files, which is the trickiest type of access, let's say, but also the more secure, you would go through this the following cycle. So you would request access to a file, and then you will need to accept a given policy. So normally, what we have implemented at the EGA and we would like to adapt to EuCanImage needs would be that you would start requesting access, you can provide a comment, and then you can already read the policy and you have to access the policy in order to send the request. So this is made by the user. Then the platform or the archive or the repository would make sure that the DAC is contacted. So it depends on the system that each institution has, but usually the DACs are contacted by email. What we started building was a DAC portal that we also plan to adapt for EuCanImage needs, where basically a data access committee, so the data controller, would have access to all the requests with the comments that the requesters left, and would also have access to a history where they can anytime revoke access to specific data. One feature that we would like to add that is not in there yet is that if you grant a request, we would like to be able to decide for how long. So you may want to grant access to a file for a specific amount of time, and we want to make this possible. So once the data controller has done that, it goes back to the repository or the archive, and it needs to be validated. And then it's the role of the help desk to validate this and to notify the user. Okay, so finally, you're the user. You have authentified, you have browsed the data, and you decided you wanted to access specific data sets, and the DAC has given their permission for you to access the files. So how do you do? So this is the second security level, the most important one, actually, that I want to talk about, is when you actually download the files. So it's what is behind the scene is really sort of like a command line. So here I show like the user-friendly version. Of course, if you have a virtual research environment, it will like more show like a kind of when you're shopping on Amazon. So you would like fill your basket and you can like get your files. But what's happening behind the scene is that you would ask for the data that is inside the repository, and this data is encrypted. So you have we use this this technology called Crypt4GH that allows us to encrypt the body of the file, the part that is in blue, and we split what we call the header of the file. So just a very, very small part that is encrypted in another way. So you already have a double encryption. In order to decrypt the file, when it goes to you, you need a special key, a private key, that will be attached to the body of the file. So you have your own key that will like unlock the header that will like allow you to read the whole file. So the key, you cannot share it with anyone, it's private to you. And what is very interesting with this is that the files are always encrypted. So they're encrypted at rest when they're in your archive. They're also encrypted in transit. So if there's any hack at any point in time, there is no way that the hacker will be able to read that file. And when it comes to you use your private key, which looks like a very long password, basically, to unlock this file. And you will be able to decrypt it on the fly while it's downloading. So it's very fast. It's really in a matter of milliseconds. And just a side note, actually, when you are submitting the files, you use a public key to encrypt it. So before you submit the file to us, you will encrypt it using your public key. And I really want to stress out that the repositories never have access to the files. So we never actually see the files. So to summarize, I show you some details about authentication, sorry, that was a French word, where you have some secure options from web or server. And one challenge is really to be able to map between the different platforms, so same user, but different platforms with possible different usernames. Browsing files, you have 3 access levels, public, registered, and control, and global alliance for health and genomics. Uses passports and visas for permission that we can leverage for the sake of the project. And then to access files, I wanted to stress that as data controllers, you form a data access committee. So you're the one evaluating the requests. That's the only thing you have to do, but it allows you to keep control over sharing and data usage. And then accessing the files will be made fast and secure. At DJ, for example, we use this Crypt4GH that allows us to make it that way. So I hope I didn't go over time. I want to thank you very much, and I will give the word back to Emanuele.
Okay, thank you so much, Lauren. I think I'm just looking if there are any questions from the audience. Actually, I don't see questions, but in the meantime, I would like to introduce the panelists, you, of course, and then we have Ignacio Gomez Rico Junquero from Valencia, Karim also is panelist, Gianna Tsakou from Athens, and Manolis Siknakis from Heraklion. Manolis, good to see you. So
good to see you, Emanuele.
So Manolis is the project manager of ProCancer Eye project. One of the AI for Health projects that we have been discussing at the beginning of this webinar. So I would like to, let's say, ask if you have any comments on the Lauren lecture. If you want to say something, if you want to raise up the discussion.
You're asking me, Emanuele?
Yeah, Manolis, if you want to start. Everybody, but of course, Manolis, you are welcome.
Okay. Thank you first of all for the invitation to be here with you, and congratulations for an excellent webinar and dissemination activity, which very nicely I followed most of it. Sorry, Karim, I missed the introductory part, so I missed your initial presentation. But I believe the remaining of the sessions, those that I followed, were of high level, and the actual thinking and the debate and the issues raised are actually at the heart of everybody's work plan, and it's part of debates in all of our projects. Regarding Laurent's presentation. Thank you very much. I think regarding ProCanceri, we've more or less have adopted similar approaches, but with some slight differences, and I will refer to where I at least if I understood correctly your presentation, I see some of the differences. First of all, technically, we've decided to adopt and stay as much as possible in the domain of reusing existing technologies and tested services, and we depend a lot regarding identity management and user authentication on the Elixir AAI service, which is basically a service supporting federated identity provision and a single sign-on based on one's institutional signing on processes. So we do not foresee to develop a project-specific, user registry, etc., etc. Equally, regarding access rights management, which you very nicely described and presented the rationale, and I totally agree. Well, we also have decided to build upon the corresponding service from Elixir, PERAN, which is the identity and access management service. We are currently exploring through internal piloting activities to explore whether the functionality provided by the service, which is, supports and covers the management of a whole ecosystem, and from virtual organization management to enrollment, user management, auditing, notifications, etc., etc. So we simply have decided to adopt it as the foundational layer, and we are currently, developing project-specific policies and functionalities on top of it. In our current thinking regarding data access and data sharing, a data access committee similar to your architecture represents a focal point in our technical solution. But I think the only difference which I potentially see from the approach that you describe in EuCanImage relates to a key question that we've debated regarding whether we allow data to be downloadable from the platform or not. And currently, although it's not a final decision, but our current thinking that everything will be done on the platform. We will not allow copies of data to be downloaded on user-specific spaces for obvious reasons regarding ownership of data, etc., etc. So initially, I think the difference, and I think Nicholas in a previous setting described, we adopt an anonymization, data anonymity. And of course, I understand the discussion and the debates, and to what extent is or can the discussion that Maddalena made, but we decide that we will seek to adopt as much as possible the upload of anonymous data following the process that Nicholas and the rest of the people described. And then data and all the operations upon the data will actually take place on the platform itself. And there I stop, and I will come back if there are questions regarding specificities.
Thank thank you, Manolis. I would like to explore the different approach, because here we have representatives from the different projects in the AI for Health. And I would like to ask to Gianna Saku, which is the approach of Incisive.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting me, first of all, and let me also echo Manolis' comments. This is a very interesting discussion that you are raising in this workshop, and I hope there will be more and continuing the discussion on these topics that need quite a lot of reflection for ending up with viable models for data sharing. So in Incisive, we are following, as Manolis said, also very similar approaches in terms of authentication and browsing files and access files. So I won't repeat the similarities. I will rather focus on a difference that we have with the approaches discussed so far. So in Incisive, we are following a federated storage and access approach and federated learning approach as well for our AI training. So this introduces a bit more technical complexity in terms of implementing the federated learning, but it simplifies in a way data access and data controlling issues. So in our case, for example, we don't foresee any possibility for downloading the data, at least not so far. We will see if this becomes possible in the next steps. But for the moment, the data is stored at each data provider's local site. And the data provider is the one who provides, the data controller of each data provider is the one who approves access to the data for whatever reason. So I would say this is our main different approach. And of course, in the framework of the project, this is quite easily manageable and doable. But I would like to introduce, let's say, a discussion topic in this session related to the eventual governance scheme of the data platforms that each of the projects is building. Because eventually we will have to think about how to make the data more widely available after the end of the project. And then, of course, we have issues like to which extent each of the data providers should be involved in the access provision, in the access rights provision. We definitely need some kind of data approval committee, data ethics committee, but who participates and in which role? So these are all, interesting challenges that we need to think about.
Thank you, Gianna. You raised also an important question: how we manage, will be the governing body for the access to the data. So if I can make just a comment on this point, I think it's important to consider that there is already something in Europe existing, which is BBMRI, that has a very clear policy on the access. Is the, let's say, institutional European biobanking organization that collects, groups the biobanks, tissue biobanks, of course, liquid biobanks or material, let's say, not digital, from different European countries, where each country has a BBMRI node with a well-established committee that decide and manage the access to the different biobanks. So each biobank has a committee that is responsible, legal responsible, and if you are a researcher and you want to access to this data, you can, through BBMRI, you access to the biobank, you request the access to the material, and there is a clear process for accessing, for certification of your access, and so on. And I think that in our projects, on the I4L projects, we should follow the same, because it's a kind of warrant of being of following specific rules and certify who is accessing to the data. I think the problem is who is requesting the data. Everybody can request data, or researchers that works in specific organization recognized by the European Union or by other non-European organizations. I think it's a problem, because everybody can request access to the data, and we have to fix the rules. But I would like to ask to Ignacio, Gomez Rico Junquero, your long name, it's quite difficult for me, but you are from the University Polytechnic of Valencia, and I know you are very well involved in the PRIMAGE project and the EuCanImage project. So if you can, let's say, give us the overview of the approach of the EuCanImage and the PRIMAGE, of course.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. It has been a great webinar, and all the presentations were great. And well, I'm from the Research Institute of La Fe, not from the Polytechnical University, but we are closely working with them. And what I think that well, Chameleon has a lot of similarities with the approach that EuCanImage has shown. But what I think that the different, the innovative thing that, as well as David said at the beginning of the webinar, is to bring up a blockchain solution to track the data access to the data sets, right? Because once we can assure that the one data set provided by any of the data providers involved in the project has been used by one of the researchers, and because we cannot or we find it very hard to provide mechanisms to avoid researchers to extract data from the platform, right? So we have to accomplish that, no? And how can we trace who is accessing what data, right? And that has been implemented using a blockchain service, which is a private blockchain, which stores the ones who have been given permission, no, following kind of the flow which Lauren has shown. But that's one point that I think that is very important to add to the mechanisms on how we deal with the data access, right? And I think that it has been very very important to show on how EuCanImage uses adds in their workflow, in the application workflow, the request to the data access. I think that's something that facilitates the whole flow, right? Well, when the DIC receives the request to access that data, and for it being in the application, that option, I think that it's quite important for the researchers to facilitate the researchers the access to the information.
Okay, thank you, Ignacio. I think that the problem here is not only the issue of accessing the data and to fix the rules for accessing the data. The problem is also a more, higher problem, is the sustainability of the biobanks that we are going, and the project that we are going to develop. We have to guarantee a long existence of the results of the project, and to make this valuable, let's say, products of the project, we need to establish rules for the access of the data. I think that these things are linked each other, because you have to, let's say, at the end of the project, make it as a, let's say, something that is concrete, is recognized by an organization and not as a standalone thing. And so that's why I was thinking about the BBMRI. No, BBMRI as something that can recruit and give to the project, let's say, a sense of being, of existence. Let's say, no. I don't know what you think in these terms, in terms of sustainability of the project and long term, which is the opinion of the panelists. Let's start with let's say Karim from the EuCanImage part. Then we go through the other.
This is a very important question, including for us in EuCanImage, where we are using an established European infrastructure, namely Eurobioimaging. So Eurobioimaging does not have unlimited funding to manage the data for years. So we do need to have a mechanism and to find a mechanism to maintain the data and for the data to continue to exist, because obviously it occupies some disk space and needs to be managed. So one way to do that would be to either find a mechanism, some sort of financial model or business model to when the data is used, particularly by companies, for example. So that would be one approach. I would have to look at the details. This is something that hasn't been yet well investigated, but that would be one option. Obviously, at the European level, we need also to see how we could get support for this repository to continue to exist. So I guess this is an issue that exists for all repositories in general. So for TCIA, they have funding for many years, but they apply again to get that funding. So this is sort of a common issue. Yeah, and then follow our project. So that's why it's important, this network that we created, the AI for Health Imaging, because we can sort of work together to keep this alive, and continuously look for funding and research project initiative to explore the data and maintain it. Well, that's so. Yeah, sorry, I don't have a definitive answer. Some avenues, but yeah, I agree that this is an issue.
But Karim, you said something very important, that we are a group of projects, and so and we have to find a solution to keep alive, to keep alive. So maybe this is the core for something in the future, to have a kind of AI for health organization of imaging projects. But let's see. I don't have a clear answer, as you said. But I would like to
Sorry,
Lauren.
To complement this one, we could be to find partnerships instead of funding. So I know the EGA is a bit more secure, let's say, in the long run, because we have this partnership with the Barcelona Supercomputing Center. So they're not giving us money, but they're using some of their own resources to put us as a priority. And I think even the problem is it might get tricky, but I think even some companies do that now. So they actually do some partnerships with research projects and offer disk space, basically, so that the data can remain available for the researchers. That's all I wanted to say to complement. I agree with what Karim had to say.
Yeah, thanks. So may I ask the same to Manolis, then Gianna, and of course Ignacio, the approach to sustainability.
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing different from pro-cancerite, what Karim has already said. I would only like, though, to state that in our initial discussions regarding sustainability and exploitation, which goes together. I mean, in our description of works, we have an action line that relates to and relevant deliverables, produce sustainability and exploitation plans. And there is a kind of a reaction from some of the clinical partners when they hear the word exploitation, coming back saying, well, are you going to be selling the data that we deliver, etc., etc. So I think we need to clarify what we refer to, and at least in our understanding, we fundamentally in the project we made clear, and I'm sure you can have this discussion in private with Daniele, that we primarily refer to sustainability. We feel that as all the projects, but because we are focused on a single cancer type as pro-cancerite, it's only prostate cancer, we believe that if we are successful in actually collecting at the quality required, the kind and the amount of imaging data and clinical data that will accompany the imaging data, it will be a globally unique resource. And it would be a waste of effort, a waste of money, a waste of brain power, etc., to simply, allow that development and that resource to disappear at the end of the project. So it's primarily we refer to sustainability, and when we say sustainability, sustainability implies that we need to, at least that's the discussion we're having, to earn appropriate, generate income so that we have, we can cover the human resources that need to operate and sustain the infrastructure, the data access committee, all the effort that relates to managing the infrastructure, as well as the cost of the infrastructure and the high performance computing services required. And we are debating approaches. Of course, one approach that we are discussing is, of course, we can give free access to academic centers, etc., but then have a phased approach regarding the private sector, SMEs and companies and industries that would like to capitalize and develop models on the infrastructure. We have not final decisions, as you probably know, as I'm sure you know. But one of the issues that I feel is important and we are currently exploring is assuming that we finish successfully and we have generated this and we potentially found a model which allows us to cover the expense and continue functioning. How and why would we draw additional data from other centers? How we will continue growing the image space? And there, I feel that both for those who received funding in delivering their data and those that will in the future, for whatever reason, continue to submit data to the repository, there should be a win-win situation. There should be rewards for those who devote time to collect the clinical data, to prepare the image data, to do all the annotation, etc. All these things that we discussed earlier on, so that other people are using the data in developing models, which hopefully will be validated and commercially exploited, because that's the idea. That's what we want to support. So basically, to cut a long story short, we are working on this share IPR model because I think there is no other way than a legal framework which allows everybody who is contributor to generating value to have a share on that potential value. So that's
okay. Thank you, Manolis. And now I'll ask to Gianna. Gianna, what's the incisive approach?
Thank you, Emanuele. As the other speakers, I don't have any answers, probably more questions to add rather than answers. In terms of sustainability, I see two levels of sustainability for our projects. So it's the incisive, let's say, sustainability, each project's sustainability approach, which is not negligible. I mean, even if one of our repositories remains sustainable, I think it's still a very big achievement. And for this, each of the projects has their own thoughts, of course. Ours are quite similar to what Karim and Manolis already discussed, so I won't repeat. Probably also merging with existing data repositories is a good approach in this sense. But more importantly, and I think all the projects can come up with similar solutions. More importantly, though, I think we need to think about all the projects' sustainability in common. And there we would need to build up a new approach, rewarding, let's say, aspects that Manolis already mentioned for the data providers will be a very important part. But before this, we also need to think about several technical prerequisites that will enable a common sustainability. I mean, right now, our projects, each of our projects has a slightly different technical approach. Some projects are following a more centralized repository approach. Others, like Incisive, are following a more federated approach. So there's quite a lot of technical groundwork that needs to be done to enable a common sustainability approach, which is very, very important, of course. So to sum up, for Incisive sustainability approach, we still need to work on it a lot, but we are thinking of merging with existing databases and agreeing with the data providers on the terms that the data will become available. At a common level, I think it's imperative that we work with all the projects together to decide on on issues like data governance, continuous enhancement of the repository, continuous data provision, and this has to do a lot with providing incentives and clear terms for the data providers. So yeah,
okay,
quite a lot of open issues.
Yeah, thank you, Gianna.
If I may add a quick comment, just to, I have no final solution, but at least to achieve that sustainability in the near future, I think that we have to rely on the partnerships that Lauren said before. No? Probably moving the infrastructure to these private cloud providers, right? Because at least that's what the situation that we have right now in 10 million. Our private cloud provider, which is the Polytechnic University of Valencia, we have this partnership that Lauren mentioned before, and I think that at least in the near future for achieving this sustainability will be a good solution.
Okay, Thank you, Ignazio. I saw that Lauren, you wrote in the chat many things. Do you want to comment on what you wrote, or?
Sure. What I was answering. I was answering questions from Karin about security. So I think it's an interesting question and difficult one.
Okay. So this was a discussion between you and Karin.
Yeah, she asked.
She
asked us. Yeah, like it was like a side discussion, but she basically asked if when someone has accessed the data, so it's accessed and it's visible on the computer, is there anything that would prevent that person from sharing this data with anyone else?
Yeah.
And in the framework that I presented, the only way they can share the data is by sharing their key, just like we would share our password or email password. And for now, there's nothing that would prevent them to do so. Obviously, a private key is not to be shared. One way to reduce this possibility is to avoid download. And I don't think, Karim, this is something we discussed too much right now in EuCanImage. The framework I presented using Crypt4GH allows for both download, but also just displaying the data on the virtual research environment. But I know Panelists and Gianna, you mentioned that you don't do download. You only make it available there. And I think that would help enhance.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Lauren, we recently have taken a decision that we will allow a very limited local download during the initial phases of our model development within the life cycle of the project. But long term, we do not foresee, and of course, that's all these decisions which are related to high-level policy decisions will have to be authorized during the next consortium meeting, etc., etc. Yeah. But yeah, that's our current point of view.
If I may make a quick comment, we are thinking in Incisive for much later stages of the project, the possibility of making a much more limited amount of data available more openly, and to have, let's say, different levels of data shareability, depending on the scope of data usage, depending on who wants to access the data and so on. But this needs quite a lot of work and quite a lot of thought still to be decided. But it could be the case that in the end, part of the data, obviously as much anonymized as possible and with less information than available already in the project context for training our models. It could be the case that this more limited amount of data is eventually made more openly available.
Okay. Thank you, John. No, yes, Karin, do you want to say something?
Yeah, if I may, I'm not part of the panel, but my question to Lauren was indeed, I didn't mean about sharing the private key, but if you are allowing to download the data, then I guess nothing prevents you no longer have control over the data. So I guess it's kind of sorry, but useless to have this private key if after that you allow the download of the data. It seems to me. So I mean, in Chameleon, we have the same approach as in ProCancerI and the other some of the other projects where also we don't allow to download data except in maybe exceptional cases where it would be absolutely required. But it's also our approach to provide all the tools and all the machine learning tools that are needed on the platform to train all the models.
Okay.
And the reason for that, if I may continue, the reason, at least how we see it in ProCancerI, is that if your data access policy is easy, let's say. It's not very strict, and you allow access to assume a set of individuals that will collectively ask access to significant and different parts of your data space. You run the risk very soon not to have any competitive advantage because they've probably downloaded the whole data space, the whole of your data space, and then you have nothing to offer. There is no, or at least that's the current thinking that is prevailing in ProCancer.
Okay, thank you, Manolis. I don't know, are there any other comments, opinions that you want to share? Because the time is running, we are running late, it's almost over.
Just a suggestion, Emanuele, we've already discussed this with Manolis and Karim and Luis. I think it will be necessary that we create some kind of working group, sustainability exploitation working group, call it however you wish, where we discuss at least some common principles for the sustainability of our repositories. And yeah, this will be really useful feedback from this working group.
Absolutely, absolutely. I will bring this to, let's say again, to the AI for Health. I'm responsible for the work. That's why I asked. I'm responsible for the work package on sustainability in EuCanImage. So, and I will be really happy to push now this topic among the different projects. Yeah. So, thank you very much. Thank you to everybody for your excellent contribution, the discussion among the panelists and among the projects that compose the AI for Health. And I think that the message here is keep in touch because we have a lot to discuss. Again, I think there is a lot of motivation to make this webinar again in the near future, again with the same organization. And I personally would like to thank, of course, the AI for Health projects. I would like to thank the European Society of Oncology Imaging that I represent as president-elect, and I would like to thank the European Association for Cancer Research that joined this initiative. I think it's been really a successful initiative that must be repeated. And so thank you so much and have a nice evening. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.